welcome everyone to another edition of On the Trail in Search of Living Legends. This is going to be, wow, episode 26. I can't believe it. And that's just episode 26 in season 5, ain't it?
Wow.
It's crazy. Seems like just yesterday we started this whole
fiasco. We're only halfway through the year.
Yep, that's it. And obviously I've got my partner and my big brother with me tonight, Nick Valente. Nick, how's it going, sir?
Oh, doing great, Jay. How about you?
Couldn't be better. Feeling good today. And we have an awesome guest with us tonight. She's got a lot of stuff going on. I've known Miss Jennifer Appleton. I've known Jen for quite some time now. She's extremely credible, and she is, like I said, she has a lot going on. So Jen, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing very well. I'm glad to see the both of you.
Yes, good.
Nice
good
to see you there.
I was worried earlier today. We had a horrible storm come through, and I thought this is all I need for the power to go out. And I have to go with Jay. I'm like, uh-oh. But it finally ended about an hour ago.
Good.
I think it's affecting everybody. I think it's affecting phones and computers.
Yeah, it was bad.
It's bad.
Thumping. A lot of thunder, a lot of rain hit us.
We're still getting that smog from Canada too, Nick. Are you still
really? No, we're good
foggy
now.
out today, man. Let me tell you what, they had a bunch of wildfires, Jen, up in Newfoundland, right, Nick?
Unbelievable.
Nova Scotia, somewhere like that, and all the smoke is heading down across the border because I'm only 2 miles from the border, so we get all that residual smoke, and it's hard to breathe outside.
It's supposed to get worse. The Sierra sands from Africa are coming over.
Yes.
So they're fixing to converge, so it's fixing to be a lot worse.
Absolutely. So Jen, can you give us a quick bio on yourself and how all this stuff came to be?
I am a retired grandmother. I worked at Nissan making cars for a living for about 10 years. And then I went from there to managing apartment communities and properties until I retired about 15 years ago, which freed me up for being here alone all the time while my husband was at work, and freed me up for time to be in the woods and walking and exploring and really getting close to the family that's been around me my entire life. You can be amazed at what you can encounter and learn when you're the only human around for 16 hours a day.
Right.
So,
Jen, what state are you in?
I'm in Tennessee. I'm in East Tennessee.
Okay.
I mean, borderline East Tennessee, more middle than East.
All righty.
Yeah, I'm about 30 miles from the property where Daryl Denton had his first really bad experiences.
Oh, that's all. Wow. That's
cool. As the crow flies, our farms were about 30 miles apart.
Okay. Yeah, I know Daryl had
some water here. Yeah, it was that close.
Yeah, that's close. That's close. So you worked in Nissan, and how long have you been retired from there?
Oh, I left Nissan in 95. And then went into the apartment business for another 15 years, probably. I've been home since 2007.
Okay, so quite a while.
Right.
So when did it all be? I don't even know where to. You've got so much going on. I don't even know where to begin.
It started when I was a kid. One of my first memories is I was 3 or 4 years old, and I'm wandering around outside. I wander across Dad's horse pasture, and I'm picking buttercups. And as a typical little toddler, I'm not paying attention to anything. I wander across the fences, and I go down a ditch, and right as I top and go over another ridge where I know I'm not supposed to be, I do know this. I stumped my foot on something really hard, and I looked down, and it was a huge foot covered in hair. And then I looked up into the most beautiful pair of eyes I've ever seen, and it was a huge female. And she was sitting on a tree that had been felled. And there was three small juveniles behind her. They weren't much bigger than me. But I looked up into the most beautiful face I thought I'd ever seen because her eyes were so loving. Wow. And that's my first memories of being introduced to one of these creatures, one of these beings.
Right.
Most likely it was a Bigfoot then, right? Not a Dogman.
Oh, no, it was not a Dogman. I didn't get my introduction to Dogman until about 5 years ago. In fact, if you had said anything to me about a Dogman prior to that, I would have looked at you like you were crazy.
Yeah.
And I grew up with Sasquatch in my life, my whole life, but never once knew that there was dogmen. And most likely there was one with the family group.
Now, how did it progress from that point on, Jen?
When I was about 6, I saw the next one, and it was a male. And I was at my grandmother's, and she did not have indoor plumbing. So we had a ringer type washer on her back porch. She was doing laundry that day. I was on the back porch with her. She had about 150 yards straight up hill. She had a fence that bordered her tobacco patch. And I noticed a huge, big black Sasquatch walking across that fence. And I started screaming, Granny, Granny, it's the bear man. It's the bear man. They've come back to see me. And Granny said, what are you talking about? And I said, look at the tobacco patch. And she looked and grabbed me up by my shirt and dragged me into the house, slammed the door, and called my dad to bring a gun if there was a monster on her farm. So I was about 6 at that time when that happened.
Wow.
And that was a big black one. It didn't look anything like the first one I had saw. The first one I saw, she was real pretty coppery color. And she had honeycomb eyes, just beautiful eyes.
Wow.
And she had darker brown leather. Her skin was leathery, but it still looked soft. But she had the reddish, coppery colored hair. She was really pretty. Now this one, he was jet black. Looking at him from that distance and being as small as I was, I just thought he was bear.
Yeah, if you can put an estimation on it, how big would you say he was?
There was a fence that bordered that tobacco patch, and I know that it was 4.5 feet tall, and it was double the height of that fence.
Double height, so 9 feet maybe?
At least 9. Yeah, he was huge. He was massive. He was massive. Yeah, and it just progressed from there. I would have knocks, whistles, footprints outside the bedrooms. And then I started seeing orbs of light bouncing through the house, dark shadows in the house. But, at the time, the house I lived in was haunted. So Dad said it was just the old lady upstairs. Dad knew the house was haunted too. But I suspect it was probably them. Sure. Yeah. But everywhere I've lived, they followed me. And I originally, I was born and raised about 90 miles from here. Moving south. It's in Marshall County, Tennessee. Right. And we moved up here in 2007. But it just continued. The first night that we were here, it snowed and we didn't even have electricity at the time. So we were sleeping in the living room, all of us piled up because we had a fireplace. And the next morning I'd go into the bathroom and I happened to look out the bathroom curtain and I look down and I just start laughing because there's a huge giant footprint right there in the snow, the new snow right there under that window. So my home is right in the middle of my father's farm. So I picked up the phone and I called my dad and I said, hey Dad, they followed me. Dad said, you are out of your mind. You are crazy. I said, no, I'm not. I am not. So that next spring, Dad was bush hogging. Right behind my house, there's a little plateau of land. You go up a little bit of a grade and it just flattens off. And as soon as he got up on that flattened off part with that tractor and that bush hog, a juvenile that was about his size, and Dad was 6 foot, just lunged forward onto the field, just spread eagle face down, as Dad went right by him with the bush hog and tractor just leaning over looking at him. So Dad called me later that night and he said, you're right, Sissy, they followed you. and the encounters just kept on going from there. Wow. Yeah. It's always something. Yeah. I've walked into them at Dad's barn. I've gone up into the loft to get buckets for Dad and turn around and be facing one and she's standing in the hayloft and I'm in the loft and she was huge and she was jet black also. You name it, we have seen it. Yeah. When did the whole Dogman business start? Started about 5 years ago. My husband and I had left to go get groceries and we decided to take the scenic route, which was just an old curvaceous road that runs right along the river. And at one point in the river, the road swings away from it and it's just an open field there. Well, I saw something come running from the river through that field toward our truck. And I said, Bob, is that a Sas? And he looks, he said, no, I don't think it is. Of course, he was driving. This thing came right up to the passenger door of the truck where I was and then was running, keeping pace with our truck. His face was plastered right in the side mirror of our truck. That's the fastest I've ever locked the door, unbuckled the seatbelt, and moved in my life. And the whole time I'm screaming, that's not a sass. That's not a sass. That is a bloody werewolf. I had no idea about a Dogman, but it was a juvenile because it was just shoulder and head above the lowest part of the door where the window started. So I finally got my courage up because it was keeping we were running 45 mile an hour. So it was running a pretty good clip, keeping right up with us, not slacking back at all. So I eased up on my knees, still almost in my husband's lap who was driving. And I'm looking just as hard as I can look to see exactly what he looks like. The curiosity was getting me. Then I knew he couldn't get in the door. And he looked very much like a very wolfish looking German Shepherd. He had a German Shepherd head. He had narrow shoulders and even more narrow through the stomach area. His arms were long and slender, but they were really muscular. Now, he didn't have his hands open, but he was running with fists. Now, the strange thing about him is he wasn't running one foot in front of the other like we would run, or even we've seen Sash run. He was lunging 2 feet off the ground forward, 2 feet off the ground forward. He was lunging. I've told many people the best way I can describe it is he looked like a kangaroo hopping. But there was no picking both 1 foot at a time and running. It was lunging. Stayed on his 2 legs the whole time. Never really looked directly at me, but I could get the color of his eyes, and they were a lightish brown color, like a little amber tint to them. And his back was like a dark gray with black blended in it. And his chest area was a little bit lighter with whites and tans, but he didn't have quite as much hair on his underside as he did on his back. It literally looked like a German Shepherd dog with extended legs running beside the car on 2 legs, except for the hands.
Yeah, the legs. Did he have the backwards legs?
Do what?
Did he have the backwards legs like a dog? The knees?
I couldn't tell that far. I could see him jumping and lunging through the grass. That's how he was moving, but I could not really see from below. I couldn't see from below the knees down.
I got you.
To see how his feet were shaped. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So
but my husband and I talked about that for years because, he's right there with me as a witness.
Sure. Sure.
It was the dangest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And that was my first encounter with them. And then one of me and my girlfriends were out hiking about a half a mile from here on top of a ridge. And she stopped me and she said, "That looks like a pup." Well, I pulled out my phone and I started videoing, and I said, "That's not a pup." And she started to walk toward it, and I reached and grabbed her, but it was like she was in a trance. It took a lot to stop her. And I said, "Julia, stop. That's not a puppy." And she said, "Well, what is it?" I said, "I'll tell you what it is. If you'll come back away from me, let's go to the house." And it was a Dogman pup, but it was up in a hollowed out log. And all you could see really was the head and the neck of it. And I said, "Well, if that's there, the whole family's there, and we need to get home to safety." But it looked a lot like the very one that ran beside the truck. It had that same German Shepherd looking head.
Right.
And I've got a short video of that somewhere. I think I'll have to send it to you.
Yeah, for sure. It'd be really interesting to see.
And then, I have taken my Sass family cornbread for years, cookies, cakes, things like that. I had taken a bucket of cornbread. I had put the fence down, gone through, and there's a wet weather pond. It's not far from the backside of my house, but it's on the other neighbor's property. And I took about 3 or 4 steps and I stopped because every hair on my body had stood up on this side. And I just moved my head. And there was a full-grown, huge Dogman on the other side of that pond, just looking at me. And I turned with 1 foot, and I never broke eye contact. And I looked right at it. And the whole time it was looking at me, it was like I could hear its thoughts. It was like he was thinking, attack or run. I mean, that's just all I could get from him. Do I attack or do I run? Attack or flee? And I held up a bucket of bread and I said, "Here's food if you're hungry." And I just set it on the ground. But again, I never broke eye contact with him. And I backed away. Well, as I was looking at him, I happened to look up and notice it right where he was standing. There was a broken branch where a branch had been. It was just a short stub there. And it was just right under his head. I mean, right above his head. So I said, okay, I'll come back there too, and I'll measure and see how tall he is. Well, I backed back through the fence. I left the gap down. And I got halfway through my pasture. Then I turned and I hauled ass to the house. But survival kicked in. And I knew, since it was a canine, if I ran, I would have been lunch. So I just look, being born and raised on a farm and having that ingrained into you from grandparents and parents, you don't ever break contact, don't turn and run. You know, stand your ground. That always kicks in and sort of helps me through the situation. And I've had some hairy ones, but that to me was the absolute worst one I've had. We went back and measured, and he was just a hair over 7 feet tall.
See.
And he looked like a wolf with a German Shepherd head, but his ears were taller and pointed than a regular German Shepherd dog. He had a long extended snout, very sharp looking teeth. His hands were open and I could see fingers with claws. So there was no paw. He was standing in pretty tall grass. So again, unfortunately, I didn't see the feet, but I could see that the thighs were very muscular. But you know what a dog looks like when you stand it up on its back feet and rub its belly. You know, the flappy skin right there where it joins the abdomen, the legs join the abdomen. It's flappy right there. That's what it looked like.
Okay.
And I noticed that the shoulders were rolled forward instead of where ours are.
Right.
Made his chest look kind of sunken.
Yep.
I had really long muscular arms, and he didn't have as much hair on his chest and abdomen area as he had on the rest of his body. I mean, it was covered in hair, but it was thinner. And he was a lighter gray with the black and the browns all mingled in. Wow. But the whole time he was standing there looking at me, he was, in fact, I have a picture of him that I sent you. I'm pretty sure that I caught of him later on. He was going to cross a fence and I got a picture of him. That was hairy scary. Yeah. Because I'm home alone, no one anywhere around. And I'm looking at this thing and not sure what it's going to do to me. And I'm sitting there thinking, very glad I had the cornbread. Because apparently it took it, because bowling all was gone the next day when my husband and I went back and we measured how tall it was to that broken limb on that tree.
Wow. And you've got little grandkids that come over a lot, don't you?
They live right across the road from me. Okay. There's a creek in between us and a little 2-lane road. And then my 5 grandchildren, my son and his wife, are literally right across the street from me. And all of them are orange, except for the children, of course, but every adult that lives over there. David's wife, my son, and her parents live there with the children, and they're always packing. Yeah. And I asked them, I said, well, you don't believe in Bigfoot. Why do you need to carry a weapon all the time? Well, there's other things out here. We've seen other things out here. I said, oh, really? What? Something looks like dogs? Yeah, big dogs. I said, oh, don't believe in Bigfoot, but you believe in those big dogs. Okay. Right. Funniest thing I've ever seen. I was doing dishes one night and it already got dark. And when I'm looking out my kitchen window, I can see my son's father-in-law's work shed. And I happened to just glance up and I started laughing because I could tell the light was on in there. So I knew he was in there working. But there was a big reddish brown squatch standing at the back side of his work building. And it looked like he was smacking the back side of the building. I couldn't do nothing but laugh because he's the one that doesn't believe in Bigfoot. And he's been hemmed into his garage, I know, at least 3 times. But he's still in full denial that there's no such thing. But he'll admit that there's some kind of strange looking wolves out here.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Maybe he'll find out the truth one of these days. He'll get enough close in person.
I showed him that picture I've got of Sky where he's sitting there smiling and you can see all his teeth.
All his teeth, yeah. Yeah,
and I said, well, who do you think this is? You think this is a big dog? He said, I don't know what that is. Where'd you get that? I said, David, look right there, buddy. My son's father-in-law has the same name. They're 2 Davids. Okay. Look right there, buddy. You see that area right there, right over my fence? Look at the picture. That's where I took it. He just said, no, no way. He's in full denial.
Wow.
But
Wow.
that's the way a lot of people are.
Yeah.
But at
it
least,
is.
you know, they're conscious of the dogman.
Yes. That's at least that's a plus. At least, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, you better believe I worry about my grandchildren constantly.
I bet.
Yeah. So
I bet.
I'm very glad that they're all active. They're all big enough now. They ride 4-wheelers or they have their little dirt bikes. So they're always making a lot of noise.
Right.
And I'm very grateful for it because I know that sort of pushes them away instead of
Right.
pulling through them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Exactly. So what else, Jen? Is I know you get a lot of stuff that's happened there. How did that? So progression from that point on, you know, from the Sasquatch to the Dogman to the other stuff.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of in between that I've left out, like when I was charged.
Yes.
You remember about that?
Yeah, let's hear about that.
All right. I had heard on the news in about 3 days' time it was going to come snow. And it was one of those years where we had a long autumn. So I said, okay. I had my husband go to the feed store and I said, get me a bag of sweet feed and get me a bag of crushed corn. And he said, why? I said, I'm going to take it down there where Dad has that pipe attached to the trees where he feeds the deer, and I'm just going to leave it there for the family. He said, well, will they eat it? I said, well, of course they'll eat it. So he went and got it for me, and I loaded it on my little tiny 4-wheeler, and I took it back there. Well, I took one of the bags and carried it about halfway down that alley, and I was inside of that black pipe. It's just a black drainage pipe, and it's about yay big around at the top, and it's attached to a tree, a sapling. Now, I was in sight of that tree when I heard the dangest roaring and screaming I think I have ever heard. And I froze in my tracks. And I heard trees being snapped and being pushed. And I heard thundering, running feet. And for some reason, my mind went, a bear. It's a bear. And I'm going to die. So I just closed my eyes. I just stood there and I closed my eyes. And I said, okay, here it comes. And then all of a sudden, all I could feel was the whoosh of the wind of something had just stopped suddenly, but had coming toward me really fast. So I counted to about 3 and I opened my eyes, and I was as close as you and I are at the moment to a female Sasquatch. And she had thrown herself to the ground, dug her heels in and dug her hands in to keep from running over top of me. And we were about 1.5 feet apart when she stopped. Ooh. Now I'm 5 foot tall, and I'm still looking up at her this much, like this, and she's on her butt. But you could tell by her legs being all drawn up that she had just had a baby. I mean, it was obvious. And then I remembered about a week before I had found what I thought was a birthing hut just at the very top of that hill she had just charged down. And it was designed similar to like an igloo. It was rounded. But it was made completely of branches and limbs and blackberry bramble and rosebush bramble and leaves. I mean, just everything you think of, throw it up on this thing. There was an opening in the front, and then there was a small, tiny opening in the back. Now that back opening, you reach through it, and someone had dug a hole just about 1 foot deep and was about 1 foot wide. So nosy as I am, I crawled into this thing looking around. I didn't smell anything. But all the leaves and the debris had been moved down to the dirt. It was all moved out of there. It wasn't even pushed to the sides. It was just gone. So when I happened to look and see that other opening with that tiny hole that hit me, that's for burying their afterbirth. I said, this is a birthing hole. Time for me to get my ass out of here before I get in trouble. So I backed back out of it. Somewhere on one of my computers, I've got pictures of it. I'll find them and show you.
Okay.
And so my mind went click, click. She just had a baby up there in that birthing hut that I found last week, and this food is for her. So I said, sister, I am so sorry that I startled you. I did not mean to. I was just bringing you food. And as soon as I said food, she took her eyes off me and she put them on that feed bag. And I said, yes, baby, it's for you. It's food. And she looked at it again. I said, it's not for the horses. It's for you. I thought you would need it. And she looked at it again. I said, yes. And I said, I have another one over here for you too. And I said, in about 3 days, this white powder is going to fall. It's going to be very, very cold. And I thought you would need it. And then I said again, I'm sorry that I bothered you. And I took a step back and I turned to my right, headed back to the 4-wheeler, which was directly in sight. The bag of feed that had been on it was gone. And I looked up to my right and there stood 3 males. And then there were trees all around me just erupted. It sounded like 500 howler monkeys. So apparently the juveniles were sleeping up in the tops of the trees. And they erupted. So I got to the fence. My 4-wheeler was on the other side of it. I took my wire pliers out of my pocket. I cut both strands of that wire and I went home. And by the time I got home, my entire body was just like, I mean, I literally could not stop shaking. I tried to call my dad and tell him what had just happened. It was on his land. Couldn't get through to him, so I called my husband and I was just babbling. He said, I can't understand you. When we get home, we'll fix the fence. So that was another one of those cases of, oh boy.
Yeah.
Very close.
Very close, yeah.
I don't think the Sasquatch people would ever harm me because I've been interacting with them all of my life. And I'm 57 now. I was 3 when I met the first one. The Dogmen, on the other hand, they're not friendly and fuzzy like everybody thinks they are.
Right.
I mean, there's
Definitely.
There's one that stays with the Sasquatch family all the time, and I'm pretty sure that he was raised with them. But as far as the ones that have moved in here now, it's to the point to where the Sasquatch people don't even want me in the woods anymore until they travel on somewhere else because it's just too dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So I have even stopped taking them anything to their gifting spot because it takes me right back by that area where I saw that wolf, that standing wolf.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
So I've had some experiences. My husband has had some experiences. You know, there was one night he and I had a little bit of an argument. You know how married folks do. Been married 21 years. We're gonna have our spats. But before it became too bad, I went out the back door. You know, went through the fence and I went to the field to the tree line. I just stood there like this. And I said, well, if you're gonna be ugly, bring it up here, we'll finish it. Well, he calmed down then. He was over his mad spell. So I went on back to the house. Well, that night I had a dream. And this is when I realized they do dream speak. It's a type of mind speak. And in that dream, I'm laying in the bed and the monarch of the family, the old female, the old grandmother, the one that I bumped my foot on when I was a little girl. She was beside my bed. Okay. She was right beside my bed. And in the dream, Bob was laying beside me asleep. And she said, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. And I said, no, don't. You cannot do that. They will put me in a cage for life. And in my mind, I showed her me living out my life in a bird cage, locked in a bird cage. And then she dislocated her jaw completely, a lot, and it dropped completely down. And her mouth doubled or tripled in size. And then she looked at me and she said, well, then I'll eat him like a bear. So right after she says that, Bobby is shaking me, trying to wake me up. And I sit up and I'm like, I'm still trapped sort of in this dream. And I'm looking at my husband sitting there. I said, what is wrong? And he went to tell me that 30 minutes before he let his old dog out to go pee. Well, as soon as she went out, she vanished. So here he goes round and around the house, butt naked, clapping his hands, saying, here, Dixie, come on, Dixie Doodle. And that third time he comes around the house, he stops at the back fence and it's facing an old walnut tree. And I think the other tree was an old elm tree or an ash. And at the time, it was just 3 strands of barbed wire. So there's really nothing there in between you and whatever. Well, she was squatting with her back to him about 2 foot from the fence. And she just looked back at him. And he come up to the fence and he was clapping and he just stopped because he saw her. And she stood up and she snarled at him. And then she roared at him. And he's just like quivering, standing there quivering. He doesn't know what to do. And she's walking away from him, but never taking her eyes off of him. Then finally he said, to hell with you, Dixie. And he ran in the house to wake me up to tell me what had just happened to him. Hence that story I wrote in group, Naked Man Running. Mm-hmm. It's based on Bob.
Okay. Okay.
Naked Man Running. Daryl didn't. He said, you ought to write a book. And please, I beg you, name it Naked Man Running. He said, you'll sell every copy just because of the cover. I just died laughing.
Sure. So Jen,
It's always something.
yeah, we usually ask people. We have our own theories, and I'm pretty sure they coincide with what your theories are. Now, you're a big believer in the portals? You've seen them yourself.
I've got a good video of one.
Yeah,
I sent it to you.
yeah, I saw that. Yeah, and I've experienced the same thing. And Nick and I both were proponents of that. Take me 10 years back, and I wouldn't have believed any. I was more of in the ape monkey camp, believing they were some sort of great ape or whatever. But the longer I went, and the more weird, pardon my French, the more weird shit that happened, I realized there's a lot more to this than people realize. All these different phenomenons are correlated.
They're all correlated together.
They're correlated.
Every one of them. And yes, they use portals to travel. And no, they're not primates. They are, in my opinion, they were here before we were even created.
Sure.
They came from another world somewhere, don't know where. They were brought here by the same group of beings that have been hiding here for years. They were brought here as a slave race to build cities, to dig mines, to dig for gold. And at some point, some of them have won their freedom. Some of them have been captured again and used in military operations. Some of them have been turned into killing machines. The rogues that you run into, especially the dogman creatures, and the combination of the helicopters, well, good and well, Uncle Sam was involved in that, because UFOs are disc-like or tic-tac shaped, or I have even seen some cubes and some spheres, but I've never seen any that look like helicopters.
Right.
And anytime I've had a dogman sighting, whether I've spoken to you about it or anyone online, within hours, there's choppers that come over, or choppers come over, and then the next day I'll see them. So I know deeply in my heart and soul, they're involved in some of them, not all of them. But some of them have been militarized.
Right.
I firmly believe that. There's been sightings. People have stated that they've even seen some of these beings, Sasquatch or Dogman, that have ankle monitors on, or they have a strange looking necklace or bracelet on. That to me is a tracking device.
I've heard of tattoo markings on their arms as well.
Yeah.
Which is another weird, I guess that'd be a form of tracking as well.
It is. But they're not only tracked by our people, they're tracked by the others. I've got tons and tons of photographs of UFOs.
Okay.
I see a UFO, I can count on Sasquatch activity dying down and Dogman activity bumping up.
Oh, wow.
It's like the cats go hide and the Dogmen come out.
Yeah. Wow. So Jen, when did the for example, that video you sent me of the alien outside your house, at what point in the whole journey was that?
When I was little. When I was 7, I was born in 66. So my father in 73 was when we had that huge UFO wave that came through Middle Tennessee area. And some were seen in Alabama and Mississippi and in Kentucky. And that was before MUFON. But there was a group of people that traveled investigating the UFO sightings and the Bigfoot sightings that were happening back in 72, 73, and 74. Dad was a member of that.
Okay.
So the very first encounter he had with a Sasquatch, my father saw on a flying saucer. That's what he's always called them, because that's what they called them when they first started researching.
Sure.
But that's when he saw his first one. And he said it was the biggest being he's ever seen in his life. He's never seen anything so tall and so muscular. And Dad said he knew he was protected, but that thing terrified him.
Sure.
So, and then
it's a very life-changing experience.
Yeah, but Dad, it's very possible that he opened up this can of worms with the aliens with his interests, because his mind was so focused on trying to communicate with them and trying to find out what they are and what they were coming from. He was working with a man named Stanley Ingram, whose daughter Becky had been abducted a few years prior, and she had been raped on board a ship, and it scarred her horrifically. Stanley was he worked for the Pulaski newspaper in Pulaski, Tennessee for a long time, and it's unbelievable what they were finding out back in 73 before they got shut down.
Right.
And they had people come by and tell them they were going to stop.
Wow.
Yeah. You know.
Wow.
But anyway, there was a lot that was going on when I was very, very young, and I'm leaning toward. I know I had some encounters when I was very young, even before 73, but I would say his interest, his lifelong interest of looking up in the sky and wondering, you know, what's up there and will I ever meet it, might have caused a lot of that UFO involvement that I've had all my life. Because I firmly believe they tag you in some way or some form. I have woke up with cuts, bruises, broken bones, you name it, horrific nightmares. I've been put under hypnosis to try and find missing time.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of missing time.
Yeah.
Just a tremendous amount of it. It doesn't stop once it starts.
Right.
You know, I can't help but wonder if the odd blood type that I have might not be their interest too, because I'm A negative or RH negative. So I'm a very rare blood type. No one in my family is RH negative or ever has been. And they really don't even know where that blood type comes from.
Right.
So that could be part of the answer in itself, that they altered me somehow.
Now, how many different types of extraterrestrials have you personally had encounters with?
I have seen the tall grays. I have seen the ones they call the tall whites. And I have seen small grays. And these things are like soulless robots. They have no consciousness. They are programmed to do one thing, to attack or to get you and bring you back no matter how hard you fight. The little ones they're horrific. The tall whites look human, they look just like me and you, except they're beautiful.
You're right. Extremely
radiant light around them. They're very tall. I mean, one of them could pick me up in his arms and he looked like he'd be holding a baby. I mean, they're very, very big.
Wow.
Yeah. There's several. I have not seen any of the insectoid looking ones.
Okay.
I don't remember seeing any reptilians, but they're very good at cloaking themselves.
Yes.
So very possible that I have seen reptilians and they were just cloaked and I didn't realize that's what they were.
Right.
They tend to, Father used to say, they tend to make you see whatever will keep you calm and never show you the truth. And I said, well, you're right about that.
Which makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just this, I had a car crash when I was 19 and it was very bad. In fact, 2 weeks, it was 2 weeks before I had the wreck. I had missing time. I had 2 hours missing time. And I was going to see my father, who at the time lived in Mount Juliet, and I lived in Murfreesboro. So I was traveling an old bridge called Hobson Pike in Antioch. And it's a very long one. So when I bumped onto the bridge, it was daylight, the radio was on, and my 3-year-old son in the back seat was wide awake playing with his toy. I bump off the end of the bridge. It's dark outside. My headlights are on, the radio's off, and little Bob's asleep. And instantly my mind goes, okay, boom, they got me. And this is way before the days of cell phones. This was like 1985 or 1986. So all I could do was drive to my father's. As soon as I got there, he met me in a rage because I was late. And I said, whoop, wait a minute. And I told him what happened. I said, they got me and I can't remember anything. So his best friend was a certified hypnosis. And he put me under hypnosis a few years later and brought back what they had done. And they had been under that bridge in a saucer-shaped ship. When I crossed on it, they came under the bridge, up over it, grabbed me, car and all, and went back under the bridge and just hovered there. And they told me that my bloodline had to continue. And I was at a point in my life to where they didn't know whether my soul was going to choose to stay or go, because there was something major fixing to happen in my life. So they harvested my eggs from my body that day. And 2 weeks later, I had that car crash and I died many, 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 many times. part of the reason they had to put me in a drug-induced coma is they gave me the wrong blood type. They gave me universal blood, and I have to have a negative RH, or my body will shut down. It won't accept universal. It's type specific. So after they did a transfusion and got all the old blood in, found someone. There was only 2 people in Nashville at the time that had my blood type that they could find. Found someone to donate to me, to give me blood. They got to try to bring me back out of the coma, but I wouldn't come out. So I spent 2 weeks in a coma. And that's when I had my go through that beautiful tunnel of light and see what really everything really is about experience. But it also, when I woke up and after I healed, it had left a cord of light per se over there to where other entities like to latch on and talk to me and ask for help. So you have to, on top of everything else you've got going on in your life, you have to learn how to shut that down. So you don't end up with those attachments trying to attach to you and drain your energy or cause you harm. So it's been an experience. I had to have I had cancer when I was 27, breast cancer and a cervical cancer. And when they went in to take the tumor out of my breast, the surgeon was just blown away. He said, I've never in my life seen so much scar tissue in anyone's breast in all my life, and you've not a scar on your body. I said, I've never had any surgery on my breast. He said, oh, yes, you have. They found the same thing when they went in to do the hysterectomy. Both ovaries were completely covered in tumors, and like the size of softballs. Wow. And I was completely, my entire abdomen, they said, was full of scar tissue. I said, from what? You're the first time I've been cut on.
Wow.
So they leave behind evidence. It doesn't always get found.
Right.
It's there in the form of simple scar tissue inside your body, yet you don't have a cut anywhere on you. It came from somewhere.
Sure.
Someone did it.
Yep. That's incredible.
The alien part of my life has been an absolute nightmare. An absolute nightmare. You know, everybody says, oh, I want to go out and land stars. I want to call the aliens down to me with my mind. And I'm thinking, you've lost your mind. You need to go back in the house and lay down and have a drink.
Right.
That's just my opinion because of my experience. But seriously, because I really do think that our powers that be work with them together. I know I have to be careful what I say on YouTube, but you know exactly what I'm implying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, the Sasquatch family, I wouldn't take anything for them. I love them. You know, they talk to me, they knock, they hoop, they throw walnuts at the house when they want cornbread. And one day my father came up to visit. He was on his 4-wheeler, and I was fixing to go up the hill to take him the bucket. I had it in my hand, and he pulled right up on the porch, and I said, Daddy, I need to take this to the trees. I'll be back in a few minutes. And he just laughed and reared back across his arms, and he said, no, I want to talk to you right now. I'm like, okay. So I set the bucket back down, and he kept on talking. It wasn't a minute. A walnut cleared his head by about 8 inches and slammed into the side of my house. And I just looked at him, and he said, he looked at me, and he looked at the house, and he just laughed. And he kept on talking. About another 60 seconds, here come another walnut. This time it was about 3 inches above his head. And it slammed into the house, and the whole outer shell just shattered. We're talking hard green walnuts.
Right.
And Daddy said, you know what, Sissy? I think it's time I go to the house. I said, you know what, Daddy? I think it's time you go to the house too.
Or he gets beaned by a walnut, yeah.
Yeah.
They wanted their food, and I'm sure they heard what he said. Because don't let them fool you. They can understand us. They can understand us.
I know they can for a fact. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
They understand us. They can speak our language. I heard a juvenile running on my house one night, and he was just running as hard as he could from one end of the house to the other. And I have a nice long house. It's like 78 feet long.
Well,
all one level. So he was running as hard as he could. And I had the bedroom window up that night because it was hot. And me and Bob both heard a female come up to the window and start scolding him in their language. And he come up to her, and he was screaming at her right back in theirs. And they didn't care we could hear him. They never do. And then she screamed at him again. And then he said plainly, no, because I don't want to.
Oh.
Fluent English.
Yeah.
I about fell out of the bed.
Oh.
But she was telling him to get off the house. And he flat told her, no, because I don't want to. They can speak English.
That's not the first time I've heard that. Yeah, and they can understand. I know the natives up here talk about them being able to understand Mohawk as well.
Right. There, I don't think there's any language that they don't understand,
Right.
depending on what their location is.
Exactly. Exactly.
I had one night. I'm only 5 foot, so he was about a foot shorter than me. So he was probably about a 3 or 4 year old. He was little. He had just come across my back deck, hauling butt. And right as I opened the back door to step out, he cleared me and went down 2 steps off to the ground and just froze. And I shut the door and I froze. And the first thing I did was said, baby, I'm not going to hurt you. You know that. I'm not going to hurt you. And he opened his mouth and he did that elongated mouth thing to where their face looks different. It really looks different. And he took a deep breath and he started a scream that within seconds had me on my knees, my hands pressed to my ears so tight. I was almost in tears and I was begging him to stop. He was causing me so much pain. And there was no, I'm taking a breath and pushing out. It was all one breath and it was just continuous. And then finally I heard an older male scream out from the forest line, Maluka. And he stopped.
Stop.
And his mother was a blonde. She was pretty good size. She stepped right at that moment when he stopped. She stepped from behind the end of my house. He turned and looked at her and ran to her. She jerked him up and took off. But from that day forward, I called him Maluka. Well, I got thinking about it. I wonder if that was really his name. So I looked up the meaning of Maluka. And it's either Spanish or Portuguese, but it means crazy. So I think it was an older brother just saying, stop it, crazy.
Right.
But to this day, I still call that one Maluka.
Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Extremely interesting. Jen, have you ever had any experiences with like the you hear people talking about the little people?
Yes, the little people, the elementals, the fae.
Yes, the elementals.
They are all with these entities, whatever these fae or elemental things are. They're like an extension of their consciousness. Every photograph I take, every time I've seen one out in the woods, they have got one of those sitting on their head, sitting on their shoulder, holding on to their chest, right there by their ear, in front of their face. But they're always got one with them. And those little orbs of balls of light that you see floating, flying through your house that look like they have faces in them.
Yep.
That's what it is. It's the elementals. But everything that elemental sees and hears goes directly back to that Sasquatch or that Dogman, because believe me, they hang around with the Dogman too.
Oh, sure.
So it's like some kind of a connection that they have.
Yeah.
Their minds are connected through these things.
Just about every experience I've had, there's been an orb involved. Which is
that's connected to the Sasquatch and it's connected to the Dogman. Yeah. And it's most assuredly connected to aliens.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Without a doubt.
You know, people say that these things cannot get inside your house. Yes, they can. They can manifest right inside your house from a ball of energy. I've got a couple of pictures I've got of a portal. And I saw a female exit this portal carrying a big ball of light. And I'm looking at her as she sees me and she throws herself to the ground, still holding the ball of light. And mentally, I'm thinking, what is she holding? And instantly in my mind, I heard, my baby. She was holding her baby, but it was still in a form of light coming out of this portal.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And then that one portal picture I took in the rain, Chris Grizzly looked at it and blew it up. And you can actually see a being come out of the light and then see it appear to the left, and it's tall and white. You can see it bend over, stand up, move its arms. You can see the whole thing, and then it shoots into the trees.
Wow.
have to say kudos to Grizzly, because he was able to finally pull that out of that video. Yeah.
I like to play it a little bit once I get my computer up and running again. I like to see that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
These are definitely rabbit holes. I tell you what, the more you go down, the twistier they get.
Oh, my property is the rabbit hole, I do believe. I think it's one of many rabbit holes.
I thought I had a bad year, man, but I've got nothing on you.
Well, I was almost a missing 411 case. It was in 2018. It was in the fall. My husband had gotten up and accidentally, when he was in a recliner, and when he did, I have a little dog, Max, and he's part Chihuahua and he's part Shih Tzu, and he was under the chair. So when Bobby put the foot part down, he was trapped under the chair. Well, we called for him for an hour and couldn't find him. He wasn't making a sound under the chair. Apparently he was asleep. So we decided to go hiking and look for him. Well, we crossed the fence onto the neighbor's land, and Bobby took a left and he went back to check at my father's pond, and I took a right and I went to my neighbor's pond. I sure wish I hadn't. I made it over there in no time. It was only like an 8 or 10 minute hike from the house. It's a small pond. It's probably 40, 50 feet wide by 60 feet in length. I mean, it's spring-fed pond. It's really deep. It's not real big. And it's real clear all the way around it once you get to the pond. I got over there and walked around the pond, but halfway around it, I looked up and I noticed the trees were whooping really, really hard, but I couldn't hear them. And I looked at my foot and I was right beside a frog. I could see his throat move, and I saw him jump into the water, but I didn't hear him hit the water. And I look back up at the trees and I kick a rock right there at my feet. There's absolutely wherever I have walked into, there's no sound. Absolutely zero. So I'm thinking, oh my God, I have walked through a vortex. I have walked through a portal. I've done something and I'm in trouble. And instantly in my mind, I heard that old female Sasquatch. I heard her say it's a trap. The only way out is turn around and re-step each step you took to enter. And that's what I did. And it didn't feel like it took me that long, 10, 15 minutes to get back around and jump over the drainage ditch that was going around the pond. As soon as I crossed that drainage ditch, I was able to hear everything. But there was a tremendous pressure in both my ears, and I felt a real loud pop. So bad that I had a little bit of drainage of blood in my ears for several days. I haven't felt fear in years, but I was absolutely terrified. Every step I took from that pond till I got home, I felt like I was being flanked on both sides and didn't know what was flanking me. And I knew I was in danger. I felt like I was the prey. Well, as soon as I got home and crossed the fence, I was walking up to my husband. He grabbed me and he started shaking me like a rag doll. Mad as hell. He's been looking for me for over 2 hours. He's already been to that pond 3 times and walked around it and didn't see me. There's no way he could not have seen me at that pond because, like I said, it wasn't a real large one. And it was real open. You could see all the way around it. I never left the pond area. He went there 3 times and I wasn't there. To this day, both of my ears ring, constantly ring. Sometimes the pitch is higher in one ear, sometimes it's lower in one ear, sometimes it's balanced. Sometimes it's just so loud, it's hard for me to even think. But it started with that day. So if I had to give up really good hearing in order to still be okay, then you have the ears.
Right.
But I think that's the closest I have come to just vanishing. And I can't help but wonder if that is not what happens to a lot of the people that vanish. Because where I didn't see anything. I just saw the pond straight ahead. But as soon as I walked toward the water and over that drainage ditch, it's like everything just went total silent. There was absolutely no sound, nothing. It was a windy day. It was a Sunday. Traffic was heavy on that road, not 55 yards from where I was standing. I should have been able to hear traffic. I should have been able to hear the birds. I should have been able to hear the wind in those limbs. I should have been able to hear that frog croak. I should have been able to hear it splatter that water. absolutely dead silence.
Wow.
See, Daryl, when he came up here to visit, he wanted me to take him to the pond. I said, I'll take you to the entrance to the pond, but I'll never set foot near that pond again.
I don't blame you.
I won't go. I will not do it. And he changed his mind and he decided not to go that day. But I said, I promise you, I will never again step foot near that pond. It almost got me once. I'm not going to take a chance on it doing it again.
I don't blame you, Jen. I wouldn't go near it again either. No
Mm,
way.
terrified me.
Jay, we're at the end of our filming time here.
Oh,
Unfortunately, and there's so much that she's put out now, and I don't even have time to throw up the pictures.
I know it. But Jen, sorry that went by so fast. We go about an hour and it's always
That really went by. That really went by fast.
a
A lot of info.
and we thank you very much for coming on.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed being here with you guys.
Great, we appreciate that. Maybe
Really,
You
thank
know-
you there.
You know where I'm at if you want any more answers. If I've got, I'll give them.
Awesome. I know you
We
will.
appreciate it, Jen. Really.
Yeah.
Thank
Appreciate
you, Nick. Thank you. And any questions goes for you too. I enjoyed being with you guys very much
All
tonight.
right.
We appreciate that. Same here. Well, everybody, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. I thought it was phenomenal. Join us next week. We've got another awesome guest coming for you, and we will see you next Sunday. We'll have a recording next Sunday, posted Monday. I always got to catch
Posted
my-
Monday, right.
All right, everyone. Have a good night. Good night, Jen. Good night, Nick.
Good night, everybody. Stay safe.
Good night, everybody.